I was glad when they said unto me,
I was glad when they said unto me,
let us go into the house of the Lord.
let us go into the house of the Lord.
Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands.
Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all ye lands.
Serve the Lord with gladness.
Serve the Lord with gladness.
Come before his presence with singing.
Come before his presence with singing.
Music, we always say, is the next best thing to heaven. If you ever want to have some glimpse of what heaven is about, you need to hear the heavenly sound.
It is backed scripturally of the Psalms of David when he says, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. Praise the Lord on the loud sounding instruments, the string instruments, the cymbal, the tambourines. All of this makes up our praises to the Lord.
The acoustic steel guitar was developed in Hawaii in the late 1880s. In the 1920s, Hawaiian recording star Saul Ho'opi, perhaps more than any other musician, popularized steel guitar music across the continental U.S., inspiring first acoustic and later electric steel guitar bands. On a standard guitar, the musician presses the strings onto frets using the fingers. The steel guitarist uses a metal bar or steel held in the hand and pressed gently against the strings. By sliding the steel bar up and down the strings, the guitarist can play a singing sound.
Steel guitar, you can use it many ways. And sometimes you can just look like talk and just sing whatever you want it to do, and you could ask Chucky, you can just do it with it.
Because the steel has established itself as the leading instrument. So you have a lot of other instruments come along to duplicate it, because without that steel lead, something seems to be missing.
It's one of the most important, I think, piece of music in our church. It's a steel. Most churches, we have a steel player.
The House of God Keith Dominion has churches in 26 states, as well as in Jamaica and the Bahamas. Whether at local gatherings or the annual National General Assembly in Nashville, Tennessee, House of God Keith Dominion worship is driven by music led by the steel guitar. The musicians add dramatic emphasis to sermons and testimonies, accompany singers, drive the praise or shout music, provide joyous energy for offertory processions, and even aid in healing.
We help the service. That's what we're here for. We're the ones who help boost the service.
Well, that's what we're supposed to do.
And that's what we do.
That's what we're supposed to do.
We are the ones who help the service.
A lot of people confuse the holy dance with shouting. We shout with our mouth and praising God. But when we're dancing on our feet, you're just giving God praise because of something that He's done for you. And just being able to get up in the morning, to be alive, that's enough to give God a dance.
I was raised in the house of God just like most of you. But every now and then I'd sneak out on Saturday night. That was my night to have a good time, amen? And you know what? I still have a good time on Saturday night. I love to dance and have a good time. I just changed partners. Is that all right? I used to dance for the devil, but now I dance for Jesus. Amen? Anybody here like to praise the Lord?
The structure was built on a slab of concrete, more than 4 inches thick. And what that means is that if you decide to jump, you will do the building no harm.
The steel guitar has been an active part of the House of God Praise since it was introduced to worship services in the late 1930s by the Eason brothers. Young Willie Eason taught himself to play a distinctly vocal style on his older brother Troman's steel guitar when Troman was not around. At Troman's church anniversary celebration in 1936, after Troman and his friend Plumer played a steel guitar duet, a surprise performance by Willie brought the congregation to its feet.
I played A Closer Walk with Thee, but I'm only playing one string melody. And Plumer he was astonished because he couldn't believe. He said, no, Eason. He said, no way. He said, no way. Because the crowd, the church, everybody went up because it sounded like you were saying, the guitar was saying the words of the song. And this, this is mostly what I even heard. Hawaiian guitar came out and was saying, you could play the words that clear and that plain. And so I guess I was practicing going behind that. And so I played this Closer Walk with Thee. I said, and granted Jesus, if you please. Then I said, daily walk, and then I made him repeat what I was saying. And Plumer he just got, and he was a professor. They taught that Hawaiian music, both of them, him and my brothers, both. They taught, and he said, no, I don't believe this, because the crowd went for it so. Because it was the words of the song, and they had never heard it played like the words of the song. They had a melody and everything, but they had never heard that before. I have never heard a man like this man before.
While still a teenager, Willie Eason briefly joined the Gospel Feast Party, a group of musicians and preachers that toured House of God church services and tent revivals with Bishop J.R. Lockley.
He also had his singers that can sing, and he also had his dancers. So when he hit the scene, he had the whole thing. And you're talking about a service. White and black will come to see the performance because they love to see them get happy and dance.
Willie Eason had to do it all with his hand. No pills, nothing but his hand. And I'm telling you, he could play that thing so good, he'd make it talk. And the only difference about his talking and my man talking, he could put it down and let it walk.
Willie Eason left the Gospel Feast Party to perform sidewalk music ministries throughout the eastern U.S. that drew large crowds. As his renown increased through 7 recordings, his steel guitar style became an important part of House of God services.
When he would come into town, he would go downtown on Saturday evenings and set up his music and play, and there would be crowds of people around to hear Willie Eason play such beautiful and dynamic music.
Willie Eason is the father of everything. Jewel, Keith, all steel players in the church. In fact, I would dare to say Willie Eason is the father of steel players in all churches.
What did you say? Say it again. Like this man be.
Shortly after President Franklin Delano Roosevelt died, he would play the song sad about Roosevelt.
Well, great God Almighty, look. What a time. England asked Churchill to resign after fighting through the European war so hard, put him out in the hands of the Almighty God. But his success was at the lead. Great God Almighty, what a history. 2 presidents that we ever felt, Abraham Lincoln and Roosevelt. I wish Roosevelt could have lived to see old glory waving over Germany. God Almighty knew just what was best. He knew that the president, he needed a rest. His battle done fought, victory done won. Our problems have just begun. Your burden get heavy, you don't know what to do. Call on Jesus, he's a president too. It was said about Roosevelt. Said about Roosevelt. It was said about Roosevelt.
Willie's singing guitar sound influenced the performances of musicians such as Henry Harrison and Henry's brother Lorenzo Harrison. Willie's success also caught the attention of his brother-in-law, Henry Nelson, who began playing steel at the age of 10. Under the inspiration of Willie, Henry went on to redefine the style of steel guitar in worship music.
Even though Willie Eason had melodic performance, all those things, but when it comes to keep the million praise music, Henry Nelson really is the father of that.
Right.
And that's what really drives the services to the kinds of levels that you're witnesses in House of God services today.
He was emulating the rub board, the bass drum, the hand clapping, and the moans that we'd hear from a regular service with just this one instrument. And at the time, I didn't even appreciate what he was doing because he came back to the church. He left the church. We hadn't heard from this guy for, must be 20 years, 15 years or something. I guess he left in the early 60s and stopped playing. And that time, Calvin and Ted Beard had taken over as the lead musicians in our church. In other words, the lead musician plays Nashville, the General Assembly. And what happened was, Henry comes back in '73, and he gets the lead spot in Nashville. And we're like, where in the devil did this guy come from? And then he comes in where we used to the guitars playing a nice like boogie style and the steel playing like melodies and things. This guy coming, we like, what's this noise?
And people falling out.
People falling out.
Everybody says this is music. This is the greatest thing now we have in church because he just brought them back to that bygone era.
And the older people were saying, now Henry is playing House of God music.
All right, Dr. Nelson, show them how the skills of open side.
We call him the Liberace because he had the curly hair and the ring.
The diamond rings. He had the matching shoes, matching socks. He have a two-tone vest on. He have the tie. He had the clip. He'd have the gold pendant. He have a necklace with a chain with the cross. He'd have everything would just be.
His vest would match the shoes. He'd have velvet shoes.
I guess that's the word. Always impeccable. Always impeccably dressed. Clean and he'd come in. In fact, he'd have his son carry his guitar in for him.
He wouldn't carry his guitar.
And set everything up. Then he walks in down the middle of the aisle, and then he takes his place like a big performer, and he just sits down, and his hands just flow, and he's just, this is the way he played. And as you said, the melodies, I mean, you could just that came forth out of his instrument because he was so smooth. It was really. Really amazing.
You had a funeral, and I hear him playing this thing at a funeral, and people just started busting out crying. I mean, it was just like somebody was singing it.
Henry Nelson's musical innovations inspired a new generation of musicians, including Henry's son, Aubrey Ghent.
Hearing the Hawaiian sound from my father, Henry Nelson, and hearing much fame go out from my uncle, Willie Eason, I began to really love the Hawaiian sound. I got started playing steel actually at the age of 7 years old. My grandfather purchased a regular guitar, lead guitar, and I took that guitar and I loosened the strings on it. It was a 6-string lead, and I put a nail, it was a 16 nail, I placed it under the strings to lift the strings. And I took a bar, he purchased a bar for me, and I got the bar and began to tune the strings back up in a key of A, and began to play it Hawaiian style.
lot of the things that we play are when we went to a service and we heard a deacon, or I'd say a deacon or a member, or just and you go home and you like, you got to make the steel do that. And what you're doing is, you may not have the voice to do it, but at a certain part of the service, you're gonna put you're gonna have that steel doing that, and the people like, okay, that's okay. Oh, that's now you playing then.
For many years, Keith Dominion musicians did not play outside of church services. In the 1990s, some of them began to perform in public as a means of evangelizing audiences that would otherwise not be reached. The Campbell Brothers and Katie Jackson have found that secular audiences respond to their music with enthusiasm similar to that of church congregations.
If you notice, every steel player starts out as a drummer. I was the national drummer. I got to that pinnacle as the drummer.
So Chuck was the first drummer in our family, actually, and then he went on to the steel. And so then I became a drummer. I think I was kind of drafted. Then Derek came along, and he was a fantastic drummer. And then my son came along, and instead of taking after me, he wants to play drums like his uncle. So now he's 14. And he's playing drums.
The next generation of House of God musicians is constantly being groomed. Children are encouraged to spend time near the band where they can observe and imitate the musicians. This association with the energy and excitement of the music motivates the youngsters to find their place in the church band. Usually starting out on drums, upcoming talent then decides which instrument they want to go on to play: guitar, bass, keyboards, steel guitar, or pedal steel. A steel guitar where foot pedals can be used to change notes.
What really made me want to do pedal steel is we have our national convention in Nashville every year. And what happened was we decided to go by Showbud, Shot Jackson's shop. And in the shop was Jimmy Day. He was just tuning up and pressing the pedals, and I never heard nothing like this. He had a wine bottle there. And my father said, "Could you play something?" He just started playing Amazing Grace while he was drinking the wine bottle without the bar. And my father and I looked at each other. We was like, "Oh, no, no." And it was so pretty the way he was playing. And he just drank a little bit and played without, and drank a little bit. And put, I don't know if this was showmanship or what it was, but the only thing I know is after he did that, I had to have a pedal steel guitar.
Maurice Ted Beard of Michigan was one of the first to play pedal steel guitar in the House of God.
in New York, I stood before you and made the unforgettable announcement entitled, "You can't live on this street. You can't go where you want, move where you choose, stay where you may." Little did I know I would draw from that moment an excellent paragon of the racial prejudice that was evident when we were told by some that we could not move here, that we could not live on this street. Lord, why did you make me black? Why did you make someone the whole world wants to hold back? Then I looked up and I saw God as a creator. And in his creative work, I saw how God lit the sun and fixed in the sky and flung the stars to the farmost corners of the night and rounded the earth in the middle of his hand. After the creation, in a day of rest, God rushed on to rush New York. He brought masons together. He brought carpenters together. He brought electricians and plumbers together. Look what God has created. Look what God has created. Look what God has created. Because of God's creative handiwork, I arrest this defining moment to welcome each of you here today. In German, du mir mehr formen. In Spanish, nosotros bienvenido too. In French, we welcome you. In English, we welcome you.
I've been talked about sometimes. I don't believe it brings me this far to leave. Even though they lied on sometimes, I don't believe it brought me this far to leave me.
Like Ted Beard, Calvin Cooke was one of the first to play pedal steel guitar in the House of God. His musical performances have been an inspiration to the House of God for decades.
We are here tonight for appeal. And in case you don't know what it's all about, you can relax a little bit. And in the other hand, take your purse out. Because we're going to talk about money.
When I was much younger, I went to my father at the age of 10 and told him that God called me to preach. And he told me to go sit down. So, and he said, okay, God called you to preach, go sit down somewhere. That's what Daddy said. So, he said, okay, if God called you to preach, I'm going to let you preach. So my father had a barber shop, and he told me to come to his barber shop to preach my first sermon. So I took my guitar up there, played my guitar for him, and preached my little first sermon. And the title was Come to Jesus. I talked about coming to Jesus at a very early age. As time goes on, I accepted my calling about 5 years ago, and I've been ministering ever since. The other influence that I had was my uncle, Bishop Lorenzo Harrison. He was a great influence on the steel guitar because the way he played his art, his contribution to the music, there was a great fulfillment to see my uncle playing. He always encouraged me to play and gave me his blessings. I'm influenced by music that surrounds me. Of the Michael Jackson today, and of the Elvis Presley, and of the Garth Brooks. So back then it was not there. Each generation changed from generation to generation. So what I'm hearing now, of course, was no way what Willie Eason was hearing. I do know Henry Nelson and Aubrey Ghent, and Willie Eason influenced them. I think he taught them. So by me kind of learning Henry's style, I kind of guess I have learned Willie Eason's style. So, I've been influenced by him in some way.
I've seen the younger players, and they're dedicated to the instrument, and they're dedicated to coming to the church, and yeah, it's going to go on and on. It's not going to stop. It's a lot of players, more than ever before.
The people that's visiting today, I gotta let y'all know who the cornerstone is. It's about the music, but it's about the word of God. That's what it's about. All of this is what it takes to make up the body of Christ. Oh, hallelujah. I better move on out the way because, oh, Jesus, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
I used to see people calling Jesus and falling out and speaking in tongues. But to a certain extent, believe it or not, I thought it was like maybe fake or maybe not for real. And until I went on my knees and got the Holy Ghost myself, at that point, I finally realized, and what it is that when you get saved, you get up from the altar, you love everybody. You just love. It's just like you love life. You like everybody is good. There is no such thing as prejudice. There is no such thing as an evil person. You love everybody. Well, church service, and whether it's Wednesday, local service, Wednesday, Friday, Sundays, is about getting to that point where you may have gotten some hate in your life, your fellow worker or your kids or your parents or somebody got on your nerves, where you lost a little bit of that love and you say life stinks. Well, if you get the service to a certain point, you get to the point where you love everybody again. You like, everybody is good. There is no evil in the world.
We have what's called a zone. And most time people don't get in that zone. Now, the same thing about preaching the church. So we look for it. Now, time is important. Now, I teach my boys I say to them, and this is where we have had some struggle, you need to watch the flow. Watch what's going on. We have expression. If we ever get you where we're supposed to have, we have everybody on your feet, and we don't have to ask you to stand. It's something that picks you up and stand you up until we get ready to let you sit down. The one thing we do, if you notice our services, we call the breakdown. When we get it in high and everybody jumping and getting emotional, whatever, we say break it down, lower it down, put in a certain thing, and that means if you may need a hymn or whatever, something that's touching that people can relate to, and they started thinking about the Lord and themselves and how far they're down, how they need to be lifted up, and just whatever it is. Say, just give them about at least about a minute and a half of that. And then you can go into anything you want to their job because you got them in that zone that everything flies.
I'm going to tell you, the most fun thing is to be a musician playing when that happens.